Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Veronica Newfer, and I'm here at the state capitol with Representative Mike Nearman, House District number 23, which is in Polk County and Yamhill County, for those who don't know. And we're having a short session in Oregon, and it's supposed to be for emergencies only, but we'll see how that's going. And without further ado, thank you for coming down.
So that's how the short session was advertised several years ago, was to be little budget fixes and little policy tweaks as we need them and stuff like that. And we've actually done some of those. So it's a good example of what this session was about.
This session you did?
Yeah, we've done some. We've passed some out of the House that are just little policy tweaks. I did one. I passed a bill with Representative Evans on. It's kind of hard to explain. It's just on like a surety bond that car repair places have to post, and it just needed a little fix there. And it was unanimous, went through unanimously and stuff. But it just needed to be done. And that's an example of what I think the short session was made for, and what it was advertised to the people that it would be for. Mm-hmm. And it kind of, over time, it kind of evolved into a little bit more than that, into the minority party gets to make the majority party gets to make the minority party take that bad votes, because we got the election coming up. That's what it kind of morphed into. And now it's the majority party knows that they have a supermajority, and they only have the tax writing supermajority up until the next election, so they better get it all done now, kind of thing. So that's what we're doing right now, is we're in the short session, which is when the other party is kind of getting all the big ugly bills that belong in the other session, whatever, they're doing those. So.
Mm-hmm. So an example
of one of the big ugly bills?
Yeah.
So even that's come through. So we had it's a referral to the voters. So it amends the Oregon Constitution to declare health care as a right, and says, yeah, and then it's not just kind of a like a aspirational kind of, we declare it's a right. It actually says that health care for all Oregonians needs to be balanced against things like funding education and other state needs. So it's a pretty serious thing. So that's kind of a big bite to take, whether we want to do that or not. But it's whatever. It's a big bite to take. And I think it's a little bit of a bigger bite than we care to take.
This is what you're voting on, or it'll be going to the voters?
No, we have already passed this out of the House. I think it's not passed the Senate yet. Mm-hmm. But if it passes the Senate, then it'll be going to the voters, because of course the voters are the only ones that can actually amend the Oregon Constitution. We can refer things to the voters to amend the Constitution, but we can't do it.
Okay, so we'll see it in November.
Right, if it passes out of the Senate, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then, of course, we have other things that we haven't seen yet that are kind of working their way through the digestive tract here in the legislature. Things, obviously, cap and tax is the big thing that's on the table. That's a big one. There's some really overbearing gun legislation, that things that are, some of these other ones, like the red flag one, which I didn't support, but at least that doesn't impact everybody. It's kind of a stealing of due process kind of thing, but
it did pass.
The red flag one did several sessions ago, but so now they have one which is safe storage, where you have to lock up your gun or whatever. That's going to impact all Oregonians that own guns. So
you have to lock it up in your house?
Yes, even at your house.
Well, where it's our personal private property right.
Well, you're asking me to defend a bill that I didn't write and I'm not going to vote for. So yeah.
So we have this the health care, and then we have this cap and trade. So the cap and trade, if you breathe, you're taxed for it. And then I guess if you don't breathe, you don't have,
no.
you don't
So
have
so they're not quite going to tax you if you breathe or whatever. But it's just businesses that are carbon emitters are going to pay the tax there. So it's gonna be pretty onerous. It's here we are. We're at a time when Australia had a cap and tax kind of legislation that they passed about 10 years ago, and they have just now repealed it. The problem with it is it's very costly. It's very much of a drag on the economy, and but it doesn't do anything. So here we are, we're in Oregon, we're just on the verge of, right now, even without this legislation, we're on the verge of shutting down our very last coal-fired power plant, right? Meanwhile, China is building hundreds of them, you know? So if we're talking about like a global solution to the problem, we're not even players in the global thing. If you count all of the factors in Oregon that are producers or consumers of carbon, Oregon is a net consumer of carbon. We have so many trees in our state that we consume more carbon than we produce. Mm-hmm. So it's just, it seems kind of absurd to say, let's put such a huge drag on our economy and force us to do something that we're already good at, you know. So it's just not good legislation.
Is there any connection that you know of between the governor here in Oregon and China?
So I don't know of any personal connection or anything. Mm-hmm. It doesn't surprise me that there's some connections to China because they're a trading partner, and so that it would make sense that there's some connections there. That's at least for purposes of this session and for purposes of this bill, that doesn't really concern me. Although some people have pointed out that the Chinese will be permitted to trade the carbon credits over there. That's kind of more ironic than troubling that the country that's the
biggest
that's one of the biggest polluters and is certainly like increasing their carbon footprint faster than their population, that country is going to get in and, you know, make money off of our carbon trading scheme that we've got set up to make the planet a greener place or something like that. The irony is more valuable than that being a troubling thing, whatever.
People talked about to you that makes you against cap and trade. I mean, the facts. What are the facts that have been brought to you that?
So the facts are kind of simple, and there's kind of just two big facts on the table. The first fact is that it doesn't really do anything. It doesn't really solve any kind of carbon problem or anything like that. So for us to put caps on the amount of carbon that we emit, we're not really a big contributor to the global amount of carbon that we have. So if we put caps on that, that's going to be kind of hard. I think I saw one thing that said that we won't be able to have automobiles in Oregon in the year 2050. That's going to be a problem. You know, light rail doesn't come to my house, so that's going to be a problem. You know, I think people like their cars. And
is this on the plan?
Yeah. So it's not. It doesn't specifically point out cars, but things like that there's not really a way that you can have automobiles and have what they project the emissions, you know, the carbon released into the atmosphere is going to have to be, and you can't have cars by that point and get to that level. The cap keeps going down every year.
Well, common sense says that that we're going to go that way, and also probably Agenda 30 probably mentions it too. But is it written anywhere? I mean, how extreme are they talking about going with this right now?
No, it's pretty extreme. It's pretty extreme, and I'll be honest that I'm not part of the Energy and Environment Committee, so I don't get all the details on the scientific facts and stuff like that. But needless to say, is this bill's not going to do anything. It's not going to make the planet any better. So that's the first thing, and then the second thing is it's going to be a huge drag on the economy. That we have industries that produce carbon. You know, I was talking to someone from Ash Grove Cement. They're a huge cement producer in Eastern Oregon, and I didn't know this, but I thought production of cement, you go dig up a bunch of calcium and a bunch of sand and mix it all together with some rocks and you get concrete, right? Well, I guess they have a process that they have to make it and they have to heat it up, and that so they're a big carbon emitter, Ash Grove Cement. Well, I like cement. I like concrete. I drive on it. I walk on it. You know, whatever. I don't think about it a lot. But if you take it away from me, I bet I'll not be happy about that. Or more likely is if you drive the price of it up. So in other words, if Ash Grove needs to buy carbon credits in order to continue to produce their thing, that'll drive up the price of concrete, and so that. That's going to be a drag on the Oregon economy for all the stuff that we need to do to build buildings and roads and those kinds of things. And that's just one producer, you know, so not to single them out or anything like that, but there's all sorts of other producers that that produce carbon. Almost anything that you produce, even if it's a highly green item like a bicycle or something like that, you got to put it on a truck to deliver it somewhere, and that produces carbon. So so that trucking company is going to that the costs of that will all get passed on to consumers there. So it's going to be a huge drag on the economy. The price of gas is going to go up. Already gas is already $5 a gallon in California just because of their carbon program. So so yeah, so we're looking at some pretty steep increases in the price of gas.
And I've seen it written, you know, on the internet. People say, well, if it's going to save mankind, then it's worth it. And you know what I want to tell these people is there's an agenda, but the reason why I don't believe in this is simply there's many reasons, but Mars is heating up when Earth is heating up. Mars cools when Earth cools. So it's all sun cycles. You know.
And you look at like the temperature cycles over time and stuff. You know, there's a time like before Christ when the Greeks were kind of the big deal then and whatever, and it was super warm then, and that was kind of a flourishing civilization, and then it got cold in the Dark Ages. Then there was a medieval warming period, and that actually caused the Enlightenment and the Renaissance. And then we went into the little ice age, which peaked in the 1850s, right around the time of our own Civil War. You hear about all these soldiers freezing in cold battles and stuff like that in states like Virginia, which aren't really that northern states, you know, whatever. And so, and then now we're kind of in a warming trend because we're coming out of that little ice age there. But it's all cyclical, and it has nothing to do with humanity or General Motors or cars or trucks or anything like that.
So getting to the nuts and bolts of why we're even talking about it is it's all about the money and power. Where's the money going?
Right. So this is great, and I'm glad that you brought this up. And this is a very important point, and this is how politics works. So time and time again is the party that's in power declares a crisis, right? And it could be a big crisis, like the planet's going to become defunct in 12 years. I don't know how that actually works its way out. Or it could be a medium-sized crisis, like foster kids are not being handled properly. Or it could be like a small crisis, like we're not able to keep up with the unemployment checks at the unemployment department, right? But we declare a crisis, and then once we've declared the crisis, we create bureaucracy to solve the crisis, right? And you've probably seen the little cartoons on Facebook or whatever. They say, oh, the planet's going to die in 12 years. Well, let's create a new bureaucracy. There, that fixed it. Or whatever, you know, those kinds of things. Or if the planet's warming and will be uninhabitable in 12 years. Well, if we just tax our citizens, we'll be able to solve that problem. And just the silliness of that. But what's really going on, and so you want to follow the money and you want to follow that. So the party in power declares a crisis. The crisis needs a new bureaucracy or more employees in the Department of Human Services, you know, a new bureaucracy for this climate trading thing, or more employees in the Department of Human Services to solve the foster kid crisis, or we just need 4 more people in the employment department and we'll get the checks out faster or whatever. And so it always involves an expansive government there. Now watch this. This is the critical moving part here. Whenever you expand government, you expand dues-paying public employee unions, and so they're putting more money in the public employee unions' coffers, and that goes straight in the back pockets of the Democrat Party, the party in power, and now we just start the whole thing again, lather, rinse, repeat. Find a new crisis, and then solve it by creating a bureaucracy. The Democrats get more money, and just on and on and on. And that's what's going on in Oregon.
Isn't it until society crumbles? Because I don't know that
eventually
Oregon,
society crumbles.
I don't think that Oregon can actually get through this. And by the time we find out we can, it's going to be too late. In other words, I mean, we look at San Francisco, all the homelessness. We even go, I can't believe I drive through Salem to get here. And I have never seen so much homelessness.
And we have the homeless industrial complex is huge. Do you know that if you took all the homeless people in the city of Portland and shut down the homeless industrial complex and just gave them the amount of money that we're spending on homelessness, that you could give every homeless guy $60,000 a year.
Wow.
Did you know that? How about that, huh? Well, I mean, not that I'm suggesting that that would be a solution, because
Right.
we know what would happen to the $60,000. But that's how much money is being spent, and it's not that many people that are homeless or whatever. And there's other solutions to the problem. But again, it's find a crisis, create a bureaucracy, a bureaucratic solution. That means an expansion of government, and then profit off the expansion of government. That's how it works. And they never solved the problem, did they? Or it's a fake problem. Like we had remember like, let's go back to climate change and stuff, which I believe is a fake problem.
Yep,
We're warming because we're coming out of an ice age. It's not we're warming because not enough people are driving electric vehicles or whatever. And so, but do you remember the ozone hole? Do you remember that big crisis there?
Yeah.
Or do you remember acid rain? That was a big, huge crisis, right? Or do you remember global cooling? That was a big, huge crisis.
I remember that when I was a teenager.
Yeah, I was about the
ice
same
age.
age. Yeah, yeah, and the ice age is coming, and that scared me. Do you remember? I remember hearing TV commercials saying, "We're going to run out of oil by the year 2000." I remember that when I was, a teenager, seeing those things, thinking, "Oh gosh, that's going to be bad," whatever, something like that. Guess what? We have more known oil reserves right now in the year 2020 than we've ever had in the history of this planet.
Wrong again.
Wrong again, right? And so each time we have this crisis, and we create bureaucracies to solve it. So the homeless crisis, the bureaucracy didn't solve that crisis. They're the same way the bureaucracy's
The bureaucracy caused it. You know why? I mean, here's what I believe. I mean, here, if I could get a bill to go through, the housing for people when we have our own property, our private property, and we have all these restrictions of things we can't do. We can't put an extra building, in our backyard to have somebody pay a little bit of rent to come in there because we have all these rules. Well, what if the government actually gave us a tax credit for housing somebody?
For being a affordable housing provider, right? And
Right.
so, right, which I'm trying to do. I'm a landlord. I'm an affordable housing provider, and I have the government's attacking me all the time and giving rights to my tenants, whatever. That who are my customers? And ordinarily, I like to help my customers, and I like to have a good relationship with my customers. But when they don't pay me and they destroy my properties, then the government doesn't let me sever my relationship with my customers there. That's not doing that. That's not making me a happy, affordable housing provider. And
Would you say this causes more homelessness?
Yeah,
I think it probably does.
So they're distantly related. But I think the homeless problem is more about mental illness and substance abuse than it is about not enough structures. So, but I think the not enough structures is we have continually dropping building starts in Oregon. Why? Because we're mean to people that want to do construction. People that might want to invest in building affordable housing, we don't give them land. We charge them too much in system development fees. We put too many rules and regulations on them. Yeah. They suffer the same stuff that other businesses do with like wage restrictions and paid family medical leave and these kinds of things. And so they say, well, I'm just not going to build as many structures. Or if I have a piece of land, I need to develop it to its full potential. So I'm going to put a McMansion on there, some 17-bedroom, 8-bathroom house or whatever, something like that, with 5 swimming pools or whatever, because that's how I can maximize my return on my investment for that land. But nobody builds 2-bedroom, 1-bath homes anymore. They don't exist. In a time when the size of families is declining, they're building bigger houses, right? So that's part of what's going on with the housing crisis. And then there's a homeless crisis, which is substance abuse and mental illness.
Right. I know that those are the number one things, but I have met so many people. I don't want to say so many. I've met a handful of people, and I don't meet that many homeless people. So I mean, that's a large amount of people who. They got a divorce. They just don't, renting an apartment is over $1,000 a month. Okay, if they can rent in a little place that's like $300 or $400 a month. Yeah. That's really simple, but those don't exist anymore because
somebody's
the government,
basement or whatever.
The government doesn't allow you.
Right.
Well, if somebody has a house, they have a basement. Sometimes they want to keep the basement, but they wouldn't mind. Like we have a lot of property. I wouldn't mind building a little cottage. and or getting
like
a little
studio cottage or something.
yeah,
like
or
that.
getting one of those cheap manufactured homes that nobody wants anymore, and putting it off in the corner and saying, hey, here's a place.
So we're starting to do some of those kinds of things, but honestly, I think that the policy legislation and that would be free for us to do. We don't have to bond $400 million to do what you're suggesting or something like that. We can just say, yeah, go ahead, you're allowed to do that or whatever.
We're not going to control you anymore.
Right, yeah, or if you have rural land, you can put some dwellings on it or whatever. And I get it that puts pressure on other things. It puts pressure on police and fire and water and sewer and schools and all this kind of stuff. So, and we need to watch those things, whatever. But I mean, presumably it would be an increase in property taxes that you would pay, which would take care of police and fire and sewer and water and those kind of things.
Well, also, though, there'd be less homeless people, so there'd be less government help for those, because these people would have. I'm not saying I'd pick up somebody homeless on the street and like bring him in there. I wouldn't even know him. Yeah. I'm just saying there would be a little less pressure, and there would be more resources for the people who really, really need it for mental issues. For anyway,
so then that's exactly what we're missing. Is we're missing that strata of housing that's for people that aren't like the live under the blue tarp sleeping bag next to Rite Aid homeless guy or whatever, but maybe like that next strata up. And you were talking about somebody's just divorced and they just need to kind of get their feet down and get a start or something like that. That kind of people those kinds of things are being programmatically excluded from becoming available because of government action, and so we need to quit doing that. And so we've started to do some things like we've started to allow the tiny homes or whatever, which is kind of what you're talking about there. I think they're still too overregulated. You were talking about you got rural land and you want to haul a mobile home out there and charge someone $400 a month to live in it or something like that, and that's probably not whatever. We're not going there probably yet, but those are the kinds of things that we need to do. Is we need to say, hey, we have a crisis and here's availability for it. But see, the party in power is not really interested in solving the crisis, are they?
No.
They'll put together a bureaucracy and say, oh, well, let's go bond $400,000 worth of money. We have a bill, I think that's the dollar amount. Let's go bond $400,000 worth of money to have the government build more affordable housing. And so this is government people. You contract with private companies to build the housing.
It's always more and more government.
They donate to my campaign, whatever, not me, because I'm in the wrong party, whatever.
The Democrat campaign.
Yeah, the Democrat campaign. And then now we have this government housing that's run by some government agency or whatever, and more people paying union dues, and the union dues go back to the Democrats. They get reelected, and guess what they want to do? They don't want to solve the housing crisis by letting you build a.
They just want to figure out how to get more taxes
more taxes and more union dues coming to them. I believe it's that the public employee unions are a big part of this there. So that's something that it's kind of the.
You won't have their vote.
No, I don't. No,
you don't.
Well,
anyway.
they in 2016 they had enough money that they put together $100,000. They had a PAC and they named it after me, and they put $100,000 in it, and they came after me. So that's how much money they have. I don't know. I don't have $100,000 to defend myself. I don't think between you and me we have $100,000 to defend me. So anyway, so that it's tough. It's tough when they want to do that, and so that's the kind of political leverage that they have. So that's part of what drives what goes on in politics here. So.
Yeah. So vote conservative. People who are honest, because as a true conservative, if you get the true conservatives, not the ones that just say they are, but we believe in less government and personal freedom. So we don't have much time, so you want to leave us with any last words? Yeah,
so we got some less government things. We have a whole bunch of ballot initiatives coming up. You'll start to see them in July, and so there are kind of a lot of good ones that kind of have a little bit of a less government spin on them. There's one to vote on taxes, for judicial vacancy reform, for administrative rule reform, for Environmental Quality Commission reform. So we got some good ones coming up, and I got a couple other ones in the pot that I haven't served up yet. So look for those in July. They'll be on the 2022 November ballot if we get them on. So, but we have some opportunities as citizens to impact what goes on that we can do outside of the normal political channels. So Oregon has two legislatures. We have this one that we're sitting in, and then we have you and me, which is the people, and we can do things legislatively as people too. So that's kind of nice.
Yeah. So, okay, well, we still have some power. We can still go to the voting booth. It's just a matter of getting correct information. I think that a lot of times people vote for more of the Democratic slant because they get one-sided information in the newspaper, in the media. So anyway, we need to stay informed. When it comes to the ballot measures that are going to be there in November, stay tuned. Watch my show because I'll definitely be talking about those. So give you the information. And also give Representative Mike Nearman a call and if you have any question over things too. So our representatives are supposed to be here for us. So thank you.
Good, thanks.
All right. Have a good week. Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye. Inspiration.
Arts and crafts.
Health and wellness.
Communication and information.
We're here to encourage and inspire you.
You have a gift? We know you do.
And so do we.
Whether you come in to look by or want to promote your gift, we invite you to come in because when we're working together, we can accomplish great things.
I just started taking colloidal silver this winter regularly. My energy level is better than it has been in years. My typical winter cold was minimal, lasting 2 days instead of evolving into bronchitis as my colds have been prone to do.